Welcome to the second episode of the Gundy and Son podcast with the one and only Gundy. How you doing today?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. Yeah, our last video got a lot of love. I'm always surprised about how much we've done 2 videos, and I'm always surprised about like the engagement that your videos get, the videos I do with you. The view to engagement ratio, like the view to comment ratio, is really high. So you've touched a nerve in people. And I think the first video we did, I said this might be the one and only podcast we do. But because we got so much love, we're back at it again.
Yeah. You're surprised. I'm surprised. I mean, one of the things is I'm just sitting here being myself, my true self, and with no agenda and just kind of speaking right from the heart. So, and the fact that folks are kind of digging that is really cool, man. It just makes my heart explode. It's just awesome, and I appreciate it, and I'm glad to be here. This ends up being one of my favorite things to do, so I'm glad to be back.
So yeah, the topic of today's video is getting your first tech job. I want to talk about why it's the hardest to kind of get that first tech job, and then the idea of reinventing yourself later in life or at any stage in your life into a programming career. And honestly, what we're going to talk about can be applied to any career, but our experience has been tech and getting into programming, so we're going to talk about reinventing yourself a little bit. But before we dive into the video, first I got to give a huge shout out, huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video, which is Udemy. You introduced me to Udemy when I first started going in my career about 6.5 years ago. I think Udemy is a great tool. It's a great place to start. I don't think programming courses in general are the end-all be-all to really, becoming the best programmer you can be, but I think programming courses can be a great start, and Udemy has a lot of terrific courses. A couple that I continually recommend are the Complete 2022 Web Development Bootcamp by Angela Yu, and then a course called React, the Complete Guide by Maximilian Schwartzmuller. Both of these courses are related to web development. I know a lot of my audience, they're trying to get into web development, so I'll put these courses plus a couple more that I recommend in the description, and you can check those out. Do you have anything to say about Udemy?
I follow a guy named Taco LaFleur. He's the caveman kettlebell. I've gotten a couple of his videos lately, and he does a really good job too. But
the kettlebell guy?
Yeah, the kettlebell guy. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if anyone's interested in working with kettlebells,
yeah,
we'll put that down in the description too. You can check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's kick it off. Let's go ahead and just get into the main topic. So the first question I want to ask you is, do you think it's a good time to get into tech?
I don't think there's a better time.
Okay.
Right now, especially with a lot of the folks that are in tech, that were in tech before COVID, right? Where a lot of places wanted you to come into the office and so on and so forth. But what's happening now is there's this great resignation. After a while, a lot of folks decided to, get a new job. And there's a huge need for technical people because of the churn and the turnover, because folks are with experience leaving because they want the perk work from home, which we can talk about that probably in another video. But yeah, it's a great time.
Yeah, even with all the layoffs that are happening, are you aware of all these? A lot of big tech companies are kind of laying off a bunch of employees.
Yes. I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying. But here's the thing too, though, is there's still a need for tech. The big tech companies, they're, awesome, right? However, in the day-to-day business, local government, state government, federal government, anywhere you go, regular businesses, they need technical people. And the thing is right now, to learn tech, there's methods like Udemy, okay, that will ramp you up quickly. And there's a desire to teach folks, okay? Nobody's putting out a job for a developer saying, hey, if you think you can develop, come on and we'll show you and we'll give you a job. All you got to do is have the desire. Actually, I've heard of that at some companies, but you kind of have to already work there. But nobody's putting that out there. They're saying entry-level developer. And they got this grocery list of things that you want, and you look at it and you go, I don't know any of that. I've heard of that, right? But the thing is the reality is that all those things on the resume, all those words that you don't think you can do, find one or two and just fake it till you make it. As long as you can talk about them at a certain level, because I'm just going to let you in a secret. You might talk to somebody and tack an interviewer who doesn't even know what they're asking you. Although you'll have to probably talk to a technical person at some part of the interview. But if you can show that you have the ability to learn, and whoever the technical person feels like I could work with this person, you got a shot to get in, I think.
Yeah, man. I mean, a lot of people go into interviews and they're worried that they don't have enough knowledge. They're really scared that people are going to think they're a phony or that they don't know enough.
The biggest thing on an interview is you have to at least know kind of roughly the tech stack, and you have to have this humility. It's hungry, humble, and smart. You have to be hungry. You have to want it. You have to have the passion. You have to be humble. I don't know. I can learn, and smart, Yeah,
there's a few things I want to dissect from what we've been talking about. The first thing that you said is, entry-level positions have this long laundry list of requirements, and to not really pay attention to those a lot. I think that's really great advice. Matter of fact, my first full-time programming job, so I had an internship / part-time job for about a year and a half. I didn't have a college degree, but my first full-time entry-level programming job, on the resume or on the job description, it said it wanted 3 to 5 years of work experience plus a bachelor's degree. I didn't have a bachelor's degree, and I only had 1.5 years of part-time work. But I still, at the time, I didn't really understand that you didn't have to meet every piece of criteria on the job description. But the recruiter called me and they're like, yeah, you can interview anyways. And in my head, I'm like, okay, I probably won't get the job, but it'll be good interview practice. And me not thinking I was going to get the job because I wasn't qualified, it gave me a level of like not giving a fuck and confidence where I really just crushed the interview. I crushed the interview and then they offered me a job. And I realized that it didn't matter. The job requirements, they're just a rough outline, right? If you're the right person and you're able to sell yourself, because that's really all it is, you're selling yourself, then you'll get the job.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm going to date myself a little bit, but the Office Space, that movie, it's a classic, and I think, a couple guys come in to kind of clean up the office, and they ask this one guy who basically doesn't care anymore, and they're just like, well, we see you've been missing a lot of work, and he says to them, well, I wouldn't say I'm missing it so much. He was honest. They wanted to promote him, but everybody was like, I do this, I do that. They were like terminating those, but the guy who actually just was honest and didn't really care, had that attitude, they gave him a promotion. So you're right.
Really?
You got to think about it, right? The job listing that you're looking at, that was written by somebody in human resources, and they were told by a manager what the qualifications were. And the manager asked a technical person, what's the qualifications? And the technical person rattled off a bunch of stuff. So through that process, it came out this bullet list of stuff. Now, if the technical person looks at it, like I look at it and I go, yeah, you need to know that. You should probably know that. Well, you definitely need to know that. So, like for example, where I work, it's C# and SQL. If you know that, you're good. There's Angular, there's Azure Cloud, there's all kinds of other things, maybe some legacy software, ASP.NET would be good to know. You should know HTML, maybe a little bit of UX experience, all that stuff. I mean, we're talking about meat and potatoes, baby. If you've got that, you're in. You can cook, right? And that's the thing. So you got to think about that. Who's telling you can't get the job? You or the person you're interviewing? So stop listening to yourself.
Facts.
When you hear that stuff, just say, I'm not listening to any of that. You got to try. suit up and show up, smile and say the words. And if they ask you something you don't know, don't hesitate. Say, I don't know, but I'll find out.
For real, man. Yeah. And to be honest, like, if you can get in front of the interviewer, even if you don't have the requirements, if you're good at selling yourself, you'll get the job. I would consider myself probably pretty average as a programmer, but I'm good with people. I'm decent at interviewing, right? I don't pass every interview. I failed a lot of interviews, right? But sometimes I get in this rhythm and it's just like I'm so snappy and witty and like I'm saying the perfect things, you know? Yeah, that's usually when I get the job offer. But if I get in my head way too much and I try to like be somebody I'm not, and I'll stutter and say some stupid shit, and then after I fuck up 1, 2, 3 times, it's hard for me to recover, and then I pretty much know after every interview if I'm going to get a call back or not. Like intuitively, I know. And I've only been wrong once. So
when you go on the interview, you got to be careful because it takes practice to know this, right? That what you're describing is the zone on an interview. But at some point inside of you got to not care.
Yeah.
You know? You got to not care. Like put on a comfortable shirt that you feel good about, you know? Maybe not, you know, don't put your dad's suit on, you know?
Yeah.
Just relax.
You got to act like the prize.
That's right, because you are.
Yeah.
That's the thing is you are the prize. The companies that's looking for an employee, they need people, and they realize that part of their some of the things they're going to have to do is train you. They're just wondering if you're material, if you're going to fit in the culture, if you're going to get along with the people. That's it. Here's the thing is that when we take this model, whatever it is, and I do the same thing, and I say I'm an average developer. I mean, I might even some days say I suck and be convinced of it. And maybe I do in that moment. The reality though is I suit up, I show up, I engage, I ask for help, I work with my coworkers. That quality beyond the tech, that's what it takes. You know, I found out early on, okay, after I did really bad in high school and went to community college, if I came to every class on time, right, with a pencil and paper, listened to what the teacher was saying, took notes, asked for help, took the tests, I ended up getting like 3.0, 4.0s, just showing up. So how does that fit into the model of a good developer? Quite honestly, that's what people want.
So you're saying the work is just suiting up, showing up, and not being afraid to get your hands dirty.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So yeah, that's one thing you taught me. You've always told me this, and it's a phrase that has always stuck with me, and I really respect you for it. As I've gotten older and really become a man, a lot of the stuff you told me when I was younger that didn't resonate with me really resonates with me now. And that phrase, those 3 words, do the work, something that it's constantly replaying in my head, you know.
That's the key is do the work, you know. I think this transitions well into kind of what we're talking about is reinventing ourselves. Before you do the work, you got to know the work. And how do you know the work? You know, and we talked about this earlier, like some people want, you know, step-by-step example.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like we're going to break out a whiteboard and start bullet pointing a whole bunch of things of what you got to do and so on and so forth. That's not it, right? You got to know the work. And how do you know the work? The thing is you already know the work inside, intuitively. You know what you got to do. We weave together who we are one thread at a time. What does that take? Discipline. I'm in a job. I don't like my job. Okay? I'm good at tech. Okay? I'm going to learn tech, right? Then I'm going to find out how I can apply tech. Who would employ someone like me who'd give me a shot? That's my work. I do that. So I learn, I talk, I meet people. I go to where tech is being done. And I do the work. Intuitively, I know. And as I go, I try stuff. If it doesn't work, but I keep trying because there's something inside of me that's burning me that says, I know I can do that. So now here's my work. And oftentimes, if we're lucky, and I've been lucky, is where you'll run into an individual who you really appreciate. And the work they do is something that you know you're good at, but they're a master at it, or they're making money, obviously, right? You can talk to them, right? They have something you want. So you can kind of get information from them, and they become your teacher. If you look, everyone you talk to is your teacher and will show you your work. But if you listen intuitively, you know your work. So once you know your work, then you do your work one step at a time. And that comes down to discipline. And the work and discipline are two things that are like vegetables and exercise, right? You don't want to do them, but I'm going to tell you what, 4th of July weekend, baby, and you ate your vegetables and you did the exercise, you're on the beach and you're crushing it, right? You're happy, right?
The 6-pack abs on the beach.
That's right. And the sun is on you and you're out there and you're not feeling all like you want to hide under your blanket or put your sunscreen on and get under that, that umbrella. You want to be on the beach throwing the football and frisbee, man, and just, enjoying.
Because you want to be a G.
That's right. Because you did the work.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Same thing with, and we know the work, right? It's discipline, Get 8 hours of sleep, right? 6 or 10, whatever. Eat healthy. Eat nutritious food that's not made in a factory. That's not garbage. Exercise. Get some kind of cardiovascular, get some kind of resistance training, If you need inspiration, it's out there, right?
Yeah. And I think we'll talk about this in a second,
ahead.
But
Sorry,
I think...
I digress.
No. I think exercise, just in and of itself, is a great way to... it really kind of just gives you a mental clarity that helps you learn and take on newer and bigger challenges in your life. We can talk about that later, but one thing I want to talk about, we're kind of a little vague in the idea of you already know your work. When we say that, we mean, okay, you've decided you want to learn how to code. You've probably bought a course, bought a book. You have some sort of starting point. Okay, but what you've done is you've overanalyzed, you've done so much research, and you've watched 10 videos on how to learn how to code, and it's all different advice, and you kind of have this analysis paralysis. Now you're confused. You don't know where to start. You bought this Python book, but now you're thinking, should I really start with this Python book, or should I start with what, Kenny recommended in this video? The answer is, it doesn't matter. Do what Kenny recommended. Start with the Python book. The most important thing is understand that right away you're not going to be efficient, but you have a starting point, and with that starting point, that's slowly going to snowball into the next step. So you have that starting point. You got to take action on that starting point. You got to start doing the work, and the path will slowly unfold. You can't get too caught up in, maybe I should do this or maybe I should do that, because then you're never going to take action. Right? Action always conquers inaction. So that's what we mean when you already know where to start, or at least that's my interpretation of it.
That's perfect. That's a perfect interpretation. Yeah. Many paths up the mountain, right? But there's only one peak. You start walking up that path, and as you walk up that path, the path starts to reveal itself. It reveals where not to go and where to go. And guess what happens? Sometimes you find guides on that path, right? Yeah. And sometimes those guides take you where you don't want to go. But there are often guides that take you where you do want to go. And ultimately, as long as you don't give up, suit up, show up, you will reach the top. That's exactly right.
There's many ways to the top. Now, the thing is, it's a long way to the top.
It is. It's a long way to the top. If you want to rock and roll,
That's the popular song you and your band, AC/DC, made back in the day.
Yeah, right. It's not as easy as it looks.
You mentioned sometimes you'll find guides that can help you. I've had many people reach out to me, and they've said something along the lines of like, hey, because of you, I found my first job in tech, and I got my first job in tech, and I'm making good money. Like, thank you for your advice and for helping me. And then that feels good, but the thing is, that wasn't me, bro. That was you. That was you doing the work. I was just a stepping stone. I was a guide, right? And if it wasn't me, it would have been somebody else, because you already made the decision in your head that you were going to do the work. And I was just a piece of that puzzle. But like I said, if it wasn't me, it would be somebody else.
Yeah, no, you're right. Exactly right. It's all you. You know, it's just what happens is it your journey aligns with theirs. You're just a guide. You're just basically the guy. You know, the person said, "Hey, which way is to the waterfall so I can get some water?" And you were standing there and going, "It's right down this path." And then he went and got water.
Yeah.
And thanks to you, he got water. Well, that waterfall was already there, right?
Yep.
The water was already there.
The waterfall was already there, and you were determined that you were going to find the water.
Yeah, and somebody had just told you where the waterfall was. Like, you had just found out too.
Yep.
And that guy that person was standing right behind you, you know?
It's very simple. It's very simple. You have a starting point. You got to realize it may not be the most efficient starting point, and it may be you may go down this path, this very first path, and it might just be completely wrong. But the thing is, then you'll learn something. We're not defined by always making the perfect move and being successful. We're defined by our failures and our fuck ups. That's what defines us. That's what makes us stronger. And as David Goggins likes to say, calluses our mind. Right?
Yeah.
That's how we really learn. So you can't be afraid to, you start with this path, you go down, you waste some time. Okay, well, now that's not the path to go down. Let's try this path. And that path will work. And then you'll go down another path, and that path will work. And then you'll go down another path. That path won't work. So you'll go back a step, and then you'll take 2 steps forward.
So when we say failures and fuck-ups, what I think at some point we kind of, and this comes from kind of being older and kind of, wisdom just by failing and fucking up so many times. We have to say, what's that model? What constitutes a fuck up? What constitutes a failure? What model am I using? Sometimes we got to back up and we got to go to that model. The reality or the truth is, at least what I've discovered, is there's no failures and fuck ups. Something happens and there's an outcome. And what you do, and I got that from that book that you sent me, Chop Wood and Carry Water.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I made a reference to that in our first video, and I had no idea that there was even a book. But anyway, that's actually in the Buddhist system. Yeah. There's some words around that. But anyway,
that book is good, man.
It's
a short read. It took me like a day or two to read, and there's a lot of wisdom in that. It basically boils down to doing what's in front of you every day.
That's right. And what you end up taking from the book is that the real critic and the real thing standing in your way is yourself. Look in the mirror. You want to see who's stopping you? You're looking at him. You think that this person did that person did this. It's just like the guide. It's just you against you, baby. That's it. It's hard to get there, but in community, a guide and people, that's where we actually realize that we got a shot and that our thoughts aren't just our own. They're the collective conscious. So guides are important.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep. Okay, so that's the first step, taking action, and then the topic of this video is getting your first job in tech, right? So you take action, you start learning how to code. Eventually the path's going to unfold, and you're going to figure out what works for you, okay? There's a lot of advice, general advice out there on coding YouTube and just on the internet in general. You're going to pick bits and pieces of that and put your own puzzle together. But getting that first job, it can be hard just because you don't have the social proof other than you saying that you've learned how to code. You don't have the social proof of, especially if you're self-taught, not having a degree or having a job. So it's going to be hard for employers to really recognize that you have potential. So I think getting your first job is the hardest, but once you get your first job, it's you kind of coast from there. Once you get your first job, you get about a year of experience under your belt. You're kind of set from there, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. I'd say if what we're saying just isn't resonating with anybody, just really off the cuff, like I get what you're saying about your work and knowing that, but I don't know what you mean and guides and all that. Okay. Find a tech stack that's popular, that most places use, okay? Get some Udemy videos and do the projects. Save them on your computer so you got proof that you did it, right? go to your community college, and if you passed high school like with a 1.0, you're going to get in and start taking some college classes, right? Get an associate's degree in tech, information technology, get the student loans, do whatever it takes, and then on the side, do the projects of this popular tech stack. And then everybody you talk to, anybody who says, oh, so-and-so does that, get an audience with them. Find a way to talk to them. And if you just followed that, man, I'm going to tell you, in a couple of years, you'll have a job. One of the things is you do need patience, too. You think it's going to happen overnight? You think you're going to take the Udemy class, get the associate's degree, and it's going to be overnight? I remember when I got my degree in information technology, it was in 2008. I was like, okay, I'm going to get a programming job making this much, and in 5 years, I'll be making this much, and in 10 years, I'll be rich. The reality is that didn't happen.
I think community college is a great choice. I think I started with community college. I transferred to university, and then I got hit with a crazy student loan bill and a lot of other things. I ended up dropping out of university. But community college, I loved community college. The teachers there were awesome. It was very cheap. If you're going to take out student loans, community college is going to be significantly cheaper. I would try to stay away from student loans as much as possible, especially at big universities if you can, right? Try to get a scholarship or, work a job and pay as you go, because that debt just it hangs over your head and it's a bitch. And student loans are kind of predatory, in my opinion.
Yeah, the one thing about community colleges is good is, like you said, the tuition is affordable. The folks that will be your teacher, they want to teach. They want to teach people because probably they do the job. And that's where the benefit for me was community college. I learned from people who actually did. And I went to a classroom. And I would encourage you to go to the classroom and meet people in person. One of the things that happens in tech is it's all online, work from home. That's okay. You can do that. I dig it. I mean, I do it. I like it. But a portion of your job, I'd say at least 30%, should meet your people in person. You need to make a connection because you develop a shorthand and an intuitiveness about how to be around these people. But anyway, my point is if you can go to community college and you can go in person, go in person. If it's a mixed bag, which is what I did, in person and online, that's good too. But learn from them. Ask them questions they want to teach you. Not only are they going to teach you content, they're going to teach you about how to kind of be in the technical world, how to play that part. And it's affordable, like you said. So with the community college education degree, 2-year degree, that's doable. And then going outside of that with Udemy, getting courses, getting saved on your computer projects that you did in the discipline or the tech stack that you know to be popular or where you could get a job. Then you have that 2-year degree. Here's some projects I did. Great attitude. I'm hungry, humble, smart. You get in front of an interviewer who needs people because everybody, this is the great resignations, people are coming and going, who wants to train people. You're going to start that job.
Yeah, even with all the layoffs in tech that are happening, I'm not scared to lose my job, at all.
No. There's the thing where everything that has helped me and moved me forward happened. There's this idea between you could either fall or you can jump. There's a let's just say there's a pond at the bottom, and you could just fall into the pond and you'd be fine, or you could jump into the pond. I think what you really need to do is, in the moment, before falling or jumping, what you do as you're falling and you land in the water, that's what you practice. There's also this idea of if you wanted to be a master sword fighter, right? You could either be trained, we're going to train on this, this, and this, and have it structured, or you could move in with a master sword fighter. You move in the house with this sword fighter, right? And everywhere out of every corner, they're coming at you with a club or a chair or a thing, just to surprise you. And pretty soon it becomes kind of, reaction. This is what I'm talking about. And I have no idea what I just said, but anyway,
neither.
maybe there's something.
I'm trying to piece that together, and I can't.
Let that roll. So that's the community college thing, man. But keep going. What's next?
I'm not afraid. Yeah, like I said, I'm not afraid to get laid off because the thing is,
Oh yeah, right.
I'm not afraid to get laid off or lose my job because the thing is,
Yeah.
I know I'll figure it out.
Yes.
And I think to have a successful career in programming, you kind of have to have the figure it out mindset.
Right. So what I'm saying is fall or jump, right? Well, if you're stuck on should I jump, should I jump, should I jump, and then you fall, the choice is made for you, right? So either way, you're going in that water. Whether you fall or jump, in your head you think you're planning it out and you think you're angling. The reality is you're not. It's being done. You're not doing it.
Yeah, I agree with that to some extent. I think if you wait around to be pushed, I think it does happen. And I think when it does happen, you should have the figure it out mindset. But there will be cases where you'll never be pushed and you'll always be comfortable. And, if I, like, for example, my first tech job, if I would have never interviewed, practiced interviewing, I would have stayed at my part-time job that was paying me $12 an hour. I was there for a year and a half. I probably would have stayed there for another year and a half, and never really pushed myself to go and find another job because I was really comfortable, and the idea of finding another job was scary. You know what I mean? So you can't be afraid to push yourself. I've pushed myself a lot, and it's really uncomfortable and it's really scary. Like one time when I wanted a raise at my first full-time job, I wanted a raise. I knew I was being underpaid, and I knew that if I just went in there and asked for a raise, they probably wouldn't have given it to me. So what I did was I found a job that I really didn't want, that was far away. It was like 2 hours away. There's no way I was going to take that job. I interviewed at that job. I got an offer for like $25 grand more than what my current company was paying me. And then I took that, I sat my manager down, and I was really polite about it. And I was really fucking scared to do this. But I sat my manager down, and I was really polite about it. I basically said, hey, I love working here. I love my work. Blah, blah, blah. But, I got this other job offer. It's really hard for me to say no to this kind of money. Do you think there's anything that you guys can do? But the thing is, you got to know that you're valuable at that company before you can do that. I knew I was very valuable, and I knew that they didn't want to lose me, that they would struggle to replace me. And he looked at me in the eye and he said, and I really respect the guy for this. I've never heard any manager do this. He looked at me in the eye. He said, "Tell me an amount and I won't lowball you." I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting some sort of negotiation, but he looked me in the eye. He said, "Tell me an amount and I won't lowball you." And I lowballed myself because I was like, oh shit, I'm not ready for this. I lowballed myself. He was like, "Perfect, we'll get it done." Next few days, they upped my salary. And then 3 months later, like, he knew I kind of lowballed myself, and he gave me another $5,000 raise. So I got like a $15,000 raise.
You definitely need to know your worth. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And what you're kind of describing is as you kind of got your first tech job and how you were, there may be some folks out there that are doing a tech job that doesn't match up to their title, but they're not getting paid to do the tech job. So that's inspiration for them. Now, when we first begin to make the change, reinvent ourselves, it's important at every step to know your worth. And that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that there are companies and institutions and places that need technical people, knowing that you're actually suiting up, showing up, and doing the work and becoming a technical person, that gives you value. And understanding, too, that when you go in front of the potential employer, the mindset should be, can I stand working for this company? And if it's not, you need to look at that, because it's a two-way street. All right? Let's just be honest, man. This is a date. This is a relationship, right?
Yeah.
And you need to be able to be yourself, be who you are, true to yourself in this relationship.
Yeah.
So let's back up and get away from, am I good enough? Do I have what it takes? Or are they good enough? And do they have what it takes? Because I'm worth something. That's courage. Being afraid on the inside, it'd be torn apart by that fear, but making a step. That's courage.
Yeah.
That's courageous.
So let's talk about not being taken advantage of, because I think for my first job, I got paid $12 an hour. I worked there for about a year and a half, and I worked about 20 hours a week, but outside of work, I was putting in another 20, 30 hours a week just because I was so hungry to learn and excel in this part-time job. I've said in the past that maybe I was being taken advantage of, but I'm actually really grateful for that job because it got my foot in the door. Perhaps if I would have realized my worth sooner, and I didn't really realize my worth until a recruiter reached out to me for a full-time job that paid me, almost triple, right? I think that to get that first job, because that first job is the hardest, if you really struggle to find an entry-level position, you keep interviewing, and you can't get your foot in the door, I really don't think there's anything wrong in taking a low-paying position, but learn from my mistake and realize that after about 6 months to a year, you definitely have the experience to get a good entry-level position making at least 60, 70, in this economy, 80K a year. You know what I mean? So if you have to take a low-paying job like I did, do what you got to do to get your foot in the door, to do that work, but understand that you'll quickly, become valuable. And that's how it is in tech. You quickly become valuable. In the first 5 to 10 years in your tech career, your value kind of exponentially ramps up.
That's right. You're right. Take the job, take the low money, learn the job, get good at it. Even if they're not paying you what you're worth, what'll happen is you'll start to know your value intuitively, okay? And if they're not compensating you based on your value, in other words, they're not going out of their way to say, oh, we see you're doing this, we're going to give you more money, okay? If you're not valuable to them, what you're learning is going to be valuable to someone else. And that's kind of what you just described. And that's how you move definitely past that. What I'm saying is that take the job, take the low paying money, 6 months to a year. Okay. And then what happens is that you professionally put it to your employer. So here's what I'm at. I like what you did, where you actually find an outside company that actually wants to offer you a job. That's a way to do it. Okay? Just as a posturing and as a barter chip. And that little bother thing that you feel like they're not paying me what I'm worth, that's good. You can use that, because I think really even to change and to reinvent yourself, you got to get pissed off.
Some would argue that if you're being... I already had a job offer that paid me more, but the thing is, I really liked the company that I was at, and I wanted to stay there because I really liked the people and the work. But some would argue that if you get another job offer and and it's that much more, you should probably just take it. And I agree with that. I think job hopping is probably the best way to quickly increase your salary. But if you want to stay at your current company and you know that you're valuable and you really like the work that you're doing, you can use that barter chip. I mean, it's just a game. It's really a game.
That's right. And it's a spectrum, right? There's the yin and the yang, right? And there's the yin and the yang in the yin and the yang. But there's that middle way. What works for you? What's your balance? How do you know? Intuitively, in your heart.
Don't let us tell you what to do. You kind of got to figure it out. You can take, pieces of our advice and try to apply it to your life.
Yeah.
But you should take what we say and what everybody says in the world, and on the internet with a grain of salt and figure out what works for you.
Yeah. If you want to try it, try it. And if it becomes a truth, then it's a truth. If it's not, then, we're full of shit. So.
Yeah, I can already see people in the comments saying, well, I can't take a low paying job because I have bills to pay and kids to feed and blah, blah, blah. And, I have empathy for those people, but I think at the end of the day, if you really want something, you're going to figure out a way to get it.
Right. The I can'ts, who are you talking to? You talking to me or yourself? I mean, who's listening? Come on. What can you do? Let's talk about that, babe. It's a mindset. It's you against you, baby. Who's telling you all this stuff? Who's that person in your head? You can stop listening to them if you want, or you can keep listening to them. It's up to you. It's your choice. It's your life.
Also, too, something we didn't really talk about is just kind of, not really giving up in the job search process. I've heard stories of people having to apply to hundreds of places, going through, 30, 40 interviews. If you really want something, you'll dig deep and you'll figure out how to get it.
I would apply at some point. I would apply for any job. Like, I got my degree, I was teaching, and then I wanted a development job, okay? And I knew Visual Basic, right? So I put my resume together, and I just kept applying everywhere. And at some point, it was like, yeah, that's just not going to happen. I really got bummed. And then out of the blue, somebody calls me and goes, hey, sorry we didn't get back to you, but you're going to be doing this interview. And I'd forgotten I even applied. And that's how I got my job. I just never gave up. Apply to any and every job. I don't know if I'm qualified. Well, guess what? Find up, apply. Keep applying, because what happens is you get good at the interviewing process. You know what to say. You understand the cadence.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where you just don't. You get to a point where you care, but you don't care. And that's the key, because then you can be yourself.
I agree. I got pretty lucky in finding my first job. But it sounds like you had to apply to a lot of places and you interviewed a lot of places.
Yeah, hundreds.
Really?
Of applications.
Yeah.
Probably in the 20s to 30s of actual interviews.
Yeah, man. Damn. So you were determined. Yeah, I know I would be very discouraged.
Well, I was pissed. I hated the job I was in. I didn't have a choice,
Yeah.
When you got to eat, you got to hunt, baby. Come on. Yeah. Get after it.
All right, I think that's going to wrap it up there. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for checking out Gundy and Son episode 2. Thanks for being on. I guess this is our show now, so I don't really have to thank you anymore.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks everybody that's out there watching these videos. Yeah, so there'll be more for sure.
All right, signing off. Deuces.